Hello, this is Jeremy playing Oxygen Not Included, and for the first time, I'm adding some food in one of these newer designed rockets. I've set that ration bin to only put food that I'm sweeping, and I'm specifically only going after food that's located in the deep freezer that I know is frozen. So I can guarantee when the dupes put that in that ration bin that it will be frozen, and it's in a vacuum area, so it will essentially last forever until one of the dupes decides to eat it, hopefully when they're up on a space mission. I'm just conscious in the last episode that I ran out of water once. I fixed that by having water sieves to produce or water out of polluted water. Also found another pocket of salt water, but just going to add another salt water pocket here that goes to a desalinator. The other thing is I probably want to get rid of this salt water that's at this location anyway. I noticed that my dupes are still being smacked by rad bolts. So I'm suspecting maybe there's not enough warning for my dupes that are going down the ladder, and they're just getting in the way of that rad bolt. So just going to put in another rad bolt reflect or a dupe sensor rather at this location with an OR gate and see if this fixes the problem. I haven't seen exactly where the dupes are being smacked by rad bolts, but that stops happening. Maybe this fix is it. So just having a look here at the inputs to this rocket, and I don't really provide any inputs, so I'm going to do some insulated pipes. That's just to prevent the oxygen that's going to go into these rockets from being too hot, because these pipes will take on heat from the Red Bull engines themselves. The Red Bull engines output a lot of power, or a lot of heat rather. Temporarily, they're going to leak that gas out into space, but the materials and objects around it, such as the ladder, will take on heat, but the pipes will too, and that will interact with the temperature of things that are inside it. If it's insulated, it will interact with it less so, which is desired. So that is the oxygen. That's going to be nice to have not really hot oxygen go in. On the other side of it, which is the water going in, is going to be even more important, because I certainly don't want that water boiling and doing actually damage inside the pipe itself. And whatever material that pipe is made out of, my dupes are continually going to be repairing it. And with whatever material, so if it was granite, I'd just be wasting granite every time I send a rocket out. The other thing is this, of course, that would bring the hot water inside the rocket, and I want to avoid that situation as well. So we'll deal with that in time. For now, let's just reroute the oxygen line, bringing it down further south than was before, so we can avoid the hot area. And those zones where those solar panels are, they're well clear of the heat area of the heat that's going to be coming out of the Red Bull engines. So they're good. The oxygen line that is running next to it is also good. We just need some insulated areas around the rockets themselves, so when they take off, they're not going to do some damage. Now, I already have some insulated pipes on the left side. That is good that is the case. Now, putting some insulated pipes. This is going to be the water line that goes into the rockets. And as I mentioned before, very important that they're going to be insulated, because if I have hot water that goes above 90 degrees, it'll actually break the actual pipes. Of course, 90-degree water that's going inside my rocket that I want to be in a comfortable temperature range for my dupes, not a good thing. I'm just going to have that go on the far side of this. And I think that is, I can actually reuse one of these lines here. So I've got a water line that's providing water into one of the farms. That's a slate wheat farm, of course. So I'm just going to have that converge over here. I'm not currently using the interplanetary launcher to actually that is not the launcher, it's a payload. It's going to send oil into that line. Don't want that to be the case, so I'm going to have a separate oil line going from that payload opener down to the bottom of the base, where that has ultimately the refinery, but I'll need to connect a water line going up. So I think we've got all the pieces to that together. Okay, so now they're still working on getting both the oxygen and the water line going up, but they've started the process of crossing the bottom of this area where the solar panels exist. As I mentioned, not going to be concerned about heat from the Red Bolt engines there. There's this, so you can see Red Bolts in that infinite loop at that reflector. That's because that's how it's supposed to work. It sees that there's dupes in the area, and it says, well, I'm not going to cross it because there's a chance a dupe might cross that path and be smacked by it. So there's actually quite a few at this moment. And once that dupe gets out of that zone, then it'll be able to go up. So there it is. All the Red Bolts finally made it safely across without coming into contact with a dupe's face. Okay, so I'm making a change to the payload receiver there. It's going to now be taking an oil line out, but far more importantly, it's going to be dumping the output material to a different location because it was dumping on top of the interplanetary launcher, and I want to avoid my dupes from going on the platform where the interplanetary launcher is, because as you can see just there, Red Bolts go through it. So that's why I destroyed one of the tiles there. The interplanetary launcher is on. Hopefully in this process it didn't turn off the Red Bolt generator, just taking a risk here, but we'll see how this goes. Just going to make sure that the oil line goes through it and they can reconstruct that mesh tile such that the interplanetary launcher can be operable once again. But yeah, some material was landing on that far right panel or mesh tile where the interplanetary launcher was, so I had things like lead and fossils, and I did not want my dupes to have to go there to grab it because, well, the Red Bolts would be smacking them and they'd be taking damage. That may have been where they were taking oh, okay, we're at a risk here. Oh, they're good. We're good. That may have been where they were doing damage. That extra dupe sensor that I have that I put in earlier in this episode might not have been necessary. But we'll see. Maybe I'll try to get rid of it in a future point, but I'm not worried about it right now. 2 water lines going in. That top one, I'm worried, is actually too close to the Red Bull engines. That may be taking on heat, but we'll address that in a little bit. All right, there was just too many close calls, so I actually turned off the Red Bolt generator. So we're not going to get Red Bolts while this is being constructed. But what I'm doing now is I'm not going to rely on the fact that there's nothing for my no reason for my dupes to stand on the interplanetary launcher platform. I'm going to explicitly make it impossible, essentially, for them to actually stand onto it, both from getting access from the top and the bottom via mesh tile, making it mesh tiles, making it out of mesh tiles so sunlight can get access to the solar panel at the bottom. But that's just going to make it extra safe, make it impossible for dupes to be able to stand on that spot there where dupes or where Red Bolts go through. And now that I have that built, I'm going to enable some Red Bolt generators once again, so I can start to continue on doing some research and operate a diamond press, since I have the research reactor running anyways. So that's going to send the Red Bolts down. I've got this sort of checkpoint or crossing that I expect is now safe for dupes to cross. First bit of ice here in the inverted world. So making progress there. I have relied on a little bit of radiant pipes. I didn't think that would be necessary, but it seems as if it is so. In particular, well, it will eventually slow it down if you didn't have radiant pipes, but it was just too slow for me, so that's why. And I've got lots of lead in this world, so wherever there's a tile that's next to water, whoops, I'm just going to destroy this because I want to get rid of that piece of granite, sweep that up before, because once it turns to ice, I'll never be able to access it again. Not that I really need it, but I might as well. And I'm just going to continue that freezing process such that I'll have enough sleet wheat for making pepper bread for all my dupes, not all my future dupes, because I've got 12 now, but I plan to have 20 by the time this is all done. If you haven't seen a past episode, this is my first research reactor area. It has the 3 steam turbines. It is no longer functioning, doesn't even have the research reactor there. I already destroyed it, but now I'm actually in the process of destroying everything around it, because why not? It's not going to be used, and someday I could be using this area for something else. What that would be, I'm not sure just yet. You'll have to wait for a few more episodes before I figure out what that is and build it. But at this point, I'm figuring I'll start the process of draining out that hot steam and nuclear waste material out into space, so that it'll at least be a vacuum area, and I'll get some of the material back that I've built this, because actually I think there should be a little bit of steel in this zone, so why not get that? All right, here we are. I just decided to take out the whole thing because there's not necessarily a lot to do at this moment, so you could just see how much intense steam is in this spot. It just doesn't leak out in a second. Even when I destroy all these drywalls, it's still 52 kilograms. So an immense amount of steam was stored at this location. I don't really have any use for it. And now it's at the temperature where the steam turbine's already turned it to water, 125 degrees. It's not going to get any cooler, or at least via steam turbines. This brine line going above, keeping those steam turbines cool, is no longer needed. So I'm just going to destroy this and avoid that whole loop from happening. That was actually on a few occasions making too much. It was making the farm for the sleet wheat too hot. So I'm actually quite glad to get rid of this whole place here, so that the brine line that's keeping the sleet wheat farm cold can properly do its job. So yeah, no, we'll completely decommission that whole zone, and at some point in time it'll be used for something else. What that is, we'll just have to wait and see. Last little bit of drywalling need to be removed, and in time all the steam will be out. Turning my attention now to the rocket that has a robot on it, because I want to send, this is the first time I've actually ever traveled with a robot or deployed a robot, so this will be actually quite interesting. I've never bothered before. I always just land it somewheres with the dupe creating some, having access to material to make a platform so that the rocket can get back down, and they would have all the material on the rocket. So no idea how this is going to go, but deciding why not? It may make things a little bit easier. The idea is you've got this robot that doesn't need to breathe. I'm now transporting it, so that rocket inside there, by the way, has enough algae and food, but I'm not actually planning to have the dupe land on a new asteroid. I'm going to have a robot go down there, and they can do some work. So you can see I've got 31,000 kilograms of or calories of food. I've got a lot of algae, so they'll be able to easily survive and get back. Dupes here are continuing to destroy this whole setup. There was some automation wire made out of lead. Why not get that lead back? All right, so that rocket is arrived right next to this new world that I want to go to. This is a world that has a lot of metal geysers. I know it has natural gas as well, which is possibly something that I want to have access to, though I have quite a bit of natural gas. But it wouldn't hurt to have that. Anyway, what I'm going to do is choose the location for the rocket, or not the rocket rather, but the robot to land. Very first robot I've ever had in this game. I don't know why I don't bother with this. I just ignored this component of the game. But here it is. What's he do? He can dig. Oh, he dug a piece of snow. Oh, how fantastic. Let's dig it so they can have access. The idea is they can actually create some sort of base living area for my dupes. So when dupes arrive, they don't have to do certain things, such as dig out a little area that has a door, an oxygen providing area, so an oxidizer, battery. That's usually the first thing that I would normally do if this was an actual dupe. I'd build a door, build a little cavity inside, and I'd put in the manual generator, the battery, the oxidizer, and then get that dupe to run on the manual generator. It's going to provide a little bit of oxygen, and I actually get a tiny bit of polluted oxygen just via this polluted dirt that's in this spot, but definitely want an actual oxidizer as well. So he's also digging out material, so I haven't brought anything with me. This is just the rocket or the robot itself. Oh, Okay, duplicate operation required. That dupe or that robot, I guess they can provide materials for the drywall, but they can't actually build a drywall. All right, that's interesting to know. The door. They can't build a door, or at least the mechanized. Can they build a regular door? And can they build a tile? This robot's not as useful as I thought. Um, oh well, all right, I'm learning. So yeah, they can build a normal tile. They just can't do drywall. That's decent to know. Manual door. Can they at least do? They can do at least do that. Okay. So I see how this is going to go. They can build some things, but they can't build anything. They're not as smart or as versatile as dupes are. Here in the inverted world, just making sure these two dupes don't stay idle, I'm going to start to load in, or build the pipes to load in water at this location and destroy the liquid vent where it's already filled up. And I'll remove that material later. Let's get back to the rocket, or the robot. This robot is constructing the door. They've got metal to be able to do that. Excellent. And let's see if they can build this setup that I would normally have my dupes do. That's going to be a battery. Might as well be a jumbo battery because the robot doesn't need to breathe. So as long as it has the material and it's able to build a jumbo battery, it looks like it can, then that will be an existing oxygen diffuser. They can build that. Excellent. And let's see if they can build a manual generator. I'll have a tiny wire that goes between. This is perfect. All right, so that means whatever dupe actually arrives here for the first time will already have this in existence. They won't have to start this process. And let's see how far. I suspect this robot is going to run out of power at some point. It can't last forever, can it? That wouldn't make sense, but we'll see how much I can do before that happens. All right, back on the homeworld, I can see some research potential for some research. I don't need any other types of rockets for the meantime. Just do some other oddball things I may never end up using. Other than that, I can sweep up some polluted water that's in the atmosuit stations. Now I'm going to go in create a cryptographic module, and the idea is this rocket is just going to be about exploring space. So I'm going to find new asteroids and mining locations and perhaps other rockets and various things in space. And that you need a cryptographic module for. So probably not going to do that in this episode, but I'll start the process because food's going to last forever. Why not just put the food in now? It's going to be food that is high morale value, so pepper bread and barbecue. Pepper bread being more. I'm going to bring it down to 10 kilograms. Sweep only. That's very important. Do not want warm food to go in there or food that is not frozen. So the food typically will be minus 40, minus 50 degrees. And that will allow me to see what is in this overall world. So I must admit, this is actually quite fun. I've never experimented, as I mentioned, with this concept of the game. So they can't dig through granite. Of course, that's a skill a dupe would have access to. Okay, not as useful as I thought. And the fact that they can't dig through granite is can only build with certain material, or maybe I only have access to sediment actually. But okay, it's interesting. Allows me to do a few things that. Why is this? There's no point in having that dupe just sort of watch that rocket. I assume the rocket doesn't need to be next to the world in order for the robot to operate. Yeah, they can't. Oh, they can't actually go down that far because there's granite. Yeah, not as useful as I thought, but I mean the robot doesn't need to eat, doesn't need to breathe, and there's a few things it can be done, like say this little tiny room that provides oxygen. I just need algae and a dupe to run. I assume the robot can't use the manual generator, otherwise it probably would have already. But that's fine. I'll not quite sure what to do with them just yet, only because there's not a lot of space that they can dig out. I might just get them to dig out some metal material. Looks like I've got some cobalt there that whoever lands here won't have to dig it out, I guess. It's interesting. I certainly wouldn't have thought. Oh, they can't. It's not something the robot can build. Of course, I can't because I can't do many things. That's all right. Um, yeah, like say it's slightly helpful. In other worlds, I could see, particularly the ocean world, would be extremely useful for that. But anyway, over to the home world. Now, I have finally gotten rid of the excessive amount of carbon dioxide. It wasn't the last episode before that, I believe, that I discovered the zone that had an intense amount of carbon dioxide, but didn't realize it did until I dug into it, and my base was covered with carbon dioxide everywhere. But I've gotten rid of that, so I can now get rid of the carbon dioxide skimmers. I can put in a second compost, so I can have two composts, a light for whoever is going to be operating that messy station to be able to see, and I can actually need to dig out some brine, solid brine, which is funny to see. I think I'll end this episode here, make this a little bit of a shorter one. I'm quite not sure what to do with the rest of the time of the robot. I guess I'll continue on in this next episode, just digging out random stuff while I advance some other stuff in the game. So, slightly helpful. It'd certainly be very helpful in other asteroids, but for this one, eh. In this episode, I've experimented with a robot. This is the first time I've ever done a robot deployment on an asteroid in any of my playthroughs. Not completely that impressed with it. It can't dig through granites. It can't build a lot of things, but it is slightly helpful in the fact that I have a door, an oxygen-based system, and it did a little bit of digging. It's finding out some random metal material that a dupe won't have to do when they get there. I can see it being extremely useful on some of the more extreme asteroids, though. I mean, it's still neat just in the fact that this thing doesn't need to eat, it doesn't need oxygen. So I suspect I am going to use it in some of the other asteroids. If I had gone back in time, I probably wouldn't bother with this particular asteroid. But anyway, if you want to see some of the more advanced asteroids that I get to, like, subscribe, and see you then.